everybody. Welcome to FreeThinker Fireside, where we put the human in humans one cozy chat at a time. My name is Helen, also known as House Bells, and it's a Monday show, so that's exciting. And we're going to say hi for the Monday show to an awesome friend of mine. Let's say hi to Scott Dickie from the ACA. So let's say hi to Scott. Hi, Scott.
Hey, Helen. How you doing?
How are you?
I'm doing great. Anxious for some cozy chat ahead of us here.
Yeah, I'm very excited about our cozy chat.
Cool.
So, okay, so tell the people who you are and what you do.
My name's Scott Dickie, as it says right there. By day, I'm a mild-mannered math teacher. I teach at a community college here in Minnesota, and by night, I am a dirty, nasty heathen, doing all kinds of atheist stuff.
Dirty, nasty heathen.
I'm one of the hosts on the Nonprofits, and I'm also one of the hosts on Talk Heathen, both of which are shows that are produced by the atheist community of Austin. As you are part of the Nonprofits as well, Helen.
I am. That's how we became friends.
That is how we became friends.
That because them's the rules, guys. If you join like an ACA program, you're automatically absolved into the ACA cult.
Pretty much. Yeah.
I don't make the rules.
It's in the fine print. It's in the fine print.
It's after the weird sex stuff is that you have to be friends with everybody at the ACA.
Right. Yeah. And it's right above where they talk about the initiation and the entry fees.
That's right. Exactly. That's how you make all the atheist money, everybody. That's where it's all coming from.
Exactly.
So, you wanted to talk about lazy thinking. So
I do
why
want
did
to talk
you
about
want
lazy
to
thinking.
talk about this topic? Why I turn off my phone.
Sorry, what was your point? You're saying why did I want to talk about this?
Yes. Why did you want to talk about this particular topic? Why does it hold interest for you?
Well, it just for one thing, it just rubs me the wrong way. It's like really one of my pet peeves, and not just as a progressive in the political landscape, not just as an atheist in a religious world, but also as a math teacher in a world where people resist the idea of learning how to do your math. There's a comedian by the name, I think his name is Ronnie Cheng, and he has a little bit about how people talk all about how I would give my life for my country. I would die for my country. And then he says, how about you do your homework for your country? How about you learn math for your country? And so that's kind of the boat I'm in. I just want people to, the benefits are the upside of learning how to think hard is it's very strong. You can we can talk about it as we get into a little bit deeper here, but that's basically the gist of why I like talking about it, or why I want to talk about it, is because we live in a world where people are becoming increasingly lazy in their thinking, and we're all suffering. We're all getting hit by the consequences of that. And so that's basically it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I'm trying to think of a question. It'll come to me. I'm a good podcast, so I'll figure something out. So, okay. So if you could think of the number one problem, I'm sure there's many, of what happens when people become lazy thinkers, like they just turn off the brain. What do you consider like the major problem with that, like the thing that drives you crazy the most?
Well, thank you for asking, Helen. I have an activity, if you think your viewers are up for a little
I love an activity. I know Cindy and Clyde will do activities. We're friends.
All right.
We'll do an activity.
Okay. All right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pose two problems for you, and then so I want you to kind of keep track of your answers, maybe even jot them down. That'll kind of help you keep you from changing your mind here. So I'm going to describe a situation, and then I'm going to give you two options of a choice that you need to make, and then so you need to decide which of the two options that you would choose. Okay, so here's the problem. In addition to whatever you own, you've been given $1,000. You're now asked to choose one of these options. Option A, you get a 50% chance to win another $1,000, or option B, you get $500 guaranteed. Okay, so I'll read it again. In addition to whatever you own, you've been given $1,000. You're now asked to choose one of these options in addition to that. Okay, option A is you get a 50-50 chance to win $1,000 or nothing extra. And then, or option B, you get $500 guaranteed. Okay, so A or B, either the 50-50 shot for the 1,000 or the guaranteed 500.
But you got the 1,000 up front.
They already gave you the 1,000 up front. Yeah. So this is in addition to that.
Knowing me, I would do A.
So you choose A. And so then go on to the second problem here.
Okay.
The second one is, in addition to whatever you own, you've been given $2,000, and now you're asked to choose one of these options. Option A is you have a 50-50 chance to lose $1,000, or option B, you guarantee lose 500.
B.
Okay. So you chose A for the first one, where you would you'd gamble on the first one, and then you chose B for the second one, where you'd lose the $500 for sure.
Yeah.
You actually selected the Cindy nailed it right there. By the way, she said, "I'm being inspired by Daniel Kahneman." You chose the opposite on both questions that the vast majority of people choose.
Really?
And yeah, you did. And so the thing is, both of the problems are identical. The wording is just different.
Mhm.
And so you chose to gamble when it was phrased in the form of you have something to gain, whereas most people would choose that they preferred the sure thing. And then you chose the sure thing when it came to a loss, when most people would choose to gamble in the case of a loss. And I understand that our situation here is not necessarily conducive to avoiding bias and that kind of thing. I did tell you ahead of time that I was going to be talking about lazy thinking, so that kind of primes your brain a little bit.
I was on the up and up, but no, I would answer the same anyway. Like this is just the way that I think.
But yeah, so most people would choose the sure thing when it comes to gaining money, and they would choose the gamble when it came to losing money, even though in both situations, option A and option B was identical. See, in the first one, I gave you the $1,000 and you had a 50-50 chance to win an extra 1,000, bringing you up to 2,000, or you wouldn't win, you'd be still at 1,000, or you get 1,500 guaranteed. And then the same thing with the other one, except you started out with the extra 2,000. So my point here is that the phrasing of the question here is what's encourages people to lean one way or the other. And that's one example of lazy thinking. And it's allowing your biases to dictate which option. And so if I knew that information about you, I could use that to manipulate your answer. I could just, depending on how I phrased my questioning, if I knew that you're actually the reverse, most people are risk takers when it comes to avoiding loss, but go for the sure thing when it comes to gaining. But if I knew about you that you would have gone reverse, I could manipulate you based off of just the way that I phrase my question. And so that's just one example of how we can use bias to how bias is lazy. We fall back on our biases. We didn't really, if you sit down and you crunch the numbers here, you would see that they were identical. And as Cindy pointed out, this is inspired by Daniel Kahneman. I just wanted to share with you his book, Thinking Fast and Slow. This, without a doubt, well, actually, until recently, up until recently, it was without a doubt my number one book recommendation for anybody under any circumstances. I think everybody should read it. It really gives you an idea of how our minds process this kind of thing. And the way he describes it is that he says that in Thinking Fast and Slow, we have two systems that we use when we're thinking. The first system, the fast system, he called it system 1 in his book. System one
Mhm.
is kind of automatic. It's quick. It requires little effort. It allows us to make rapid judgments at a moment's notice and respond to threats in the environment as they come up. For example, if you see a lion out in the wild, you don't really have time to analyze the situation. You just turn around and run, right? And so system
Right.
one relies on mental shortcuts that might save you from a lion, but might, now we're in a much more complex world where we haven't evolved a lot recently, at least as far as if we compare it to the entire length of our evolutionary history. And so now we have such complex problems that it can lead us to, for example, vote against our interest, maybe attend church services at places that are actually destructive and harmful and that kind of thing. And
Mhm.
so um, our biases let us down there. Our shortcuts, our heuristics, it's called mental. It's
Mhm.
shortcuts in thinking. They can betray us. They can betray us. And so that's the system one, the type one thinking. The type two thinking is the slower, more deliberate. It's more analytical. It takes more effort, and it's less based on emotion. Our quick thinking is very often based on emotion, and our slow thinking is much more intellectual. We engage in deeper reasoning. We can solve more complex problems. And more importantly, we can override when the first system makes mistakes. And so we have this easy method that is quick and easy and prone to mistakes. And then we have this slower method that's more difficult, but it's more accurate. And so over the millennia that we've been evolving, the thousands of years and hundreds of thousands of years as Homo sapiens, we've developed both of these systems because they both have practical use. Right? We're
Right.
going to come into we're going to encounter life and death situations where we have to make quick decisions, or else, if you stop to think about, should I run from that lion? You're going to get eaten, right? So there are situations where you need to be able to react quickly, but then, there are other situations where a more deep thinking is involved. And so that's kind of the basis of what I wanted to talk about today. And I'll stop
No,
talking for a second in case you want to throw in your thoughts here.
no, it's fine. Um, I haven't read the book, but I'm very familiar with the concepts.
Mm-hmm.
Just by understanding analytical thinking, and you take a psychology class,
Mm-hmm.
you take a few psychology classes. This comes up a lot.
Right.
The way that we think, and I get it because I think who was on? I had somebody on like last week. I don't remember the conversation I was having. It was on podcast. I don't know if it was on mine or non-profits, whatever. Like when you're climbing a tree, you're not like if you're being chased by that lion, you're not going to think about which tree is going to give me the most height or whatever. You're going to climb the tree.
Right.
You're just going to climb the tree that's the nearest tree you can climb. You're not going to do these deep analysis versus if you were planning ahead, I know there's lines in this area and you had time to think about which of these trees would be the best for me to climb.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's why that fast thinking is still around, because if we did stop to take, to survey the landscape and try to figure out which tree we should go to, then we'd be in big trouble.
Right.
And as I'm talking about this, it reminds me of something that happened to you and I recently. We had an experience recently when we were recording the nonprofits, and I think you might figured out what I was talking about here. This was an episode of the nonprofits, and it was episode 24.08.4, which posted on March 8th of this year, titled "Communion: No Wine, No Wafer, No Service," and I'll put a link in the comment
Do you
down
want to share
below.
your screen?
No, I'm not. No, I don't need to share my screen. I'll just put
Okay.
a link in the
Okay.
bottom there. But basically, just to give a little bit of background for if anyone's listening and they're not familiar with the nonprofits, we're basically have four atheists that talk about news stories with through the lens of the atheist secular humanist perspective. We talk about news stories and other current events and that kind of thing. But now the way we do it is so there's 4 of us on the show at a time, and one of us acts as like kind of the leader of the show. We call that position the conductor. And so then the other 3 panelists will read the articles that we're talking about, and then we'll write down some notes about what the things that they want to say. And then the conductor can also do that. And so then when we're recording, the conductor kind of directs the conversation to make sure everybody can get in their points and so on. And so what happened here was this particular story was about the Church of England, I believe it was, and about how the Church of England was banning the use of non-alcoholic wine and gluten-free wafers in their communion services. And so and as we were, and so when, and I was conducting on this episode. And so usually when I'm conducting, I wait till all of the other panelists are done with their notes, and then I go in and I add my own in, and I build up the conversation based off of what the other panelists want. And so I noticed that as I was doing my research, I stumbled across a press release from the Church of England in direct response to this particular story. And the Church of England, basically, I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, but they just said, bullshit. They said, no, we never forbade, the use of alcoholic wine. We never said you couldn't use gluten-free wafers. In fact, many churches do that all the time. And so I noticed that in the panelists' notes, no one mentioned that. Okay, so we were all kind of jumping on the bandwagon here, kind of laughing at this church. And so I talked to one of the producers and I said, hey, look, this is actually a bullshit story. Should I say something? And the producer and I both agreed. We were like, let's not say anything until the end of the recording. And so we did. And so we did that. We went in, we did the recording. And then at the end of the episode, I said, hey guys, I got to admit to you, it's a fake story. It's not real. And so we were all kind of, and not to say that I was any different. I just accidentally came across that press release. I wasn't specifically looking to double check our work. But it turned out that we all kind of went along with it. We all were victims of our own lazy thinking. We didn't bother to check our facts. None of us checked our facts. And
nope.
If I hadn't have accidentally come across that,
I told
we
you
would
that
still not know.
I knew better as the former Catholic. I knew better, and I still didn't double check myself. So I'm kind of kicking myself in the butt for that. So
yeah, and that's good. I mean, kicking yourself in the butt, I think, is an excellent response to that, because I was doing that as well. And I don't know what. How did you feel when I said that? I was just curious. We didn't really talk about it too much on the show.
Like, I've gotten used to being corrected. So, I also think too, like, because we're in this, we're atheists and skeptics, that we tend to, and I'm not saying this is fair, because it's not, but we tend to think the worst when it comes to religion. We tend, because it does a lot of bad things, and not everything that's bad is contributed to religion. And like, as you point out, that this was a fake story, and I knew, I was like, that doesn't make any sense, because I remember having grape juice when I was a child, and that being an option for people that wasn't, had, were alcoholics and blah blah blah.
Well, remember, this was Church of England, right? This was Church of England, not the Catholic Church. Yeah.
I know, but still, like, I should have listened to the part of me that was like, this doesn't sound right. Right. But did I listen to that part of my brain? Of course I didn't.
Yeah. And you all took the news very, very well. You were all like, oh yeah, we should have checked. And in those situations, it's very easy to be defensive. But I thought that the environment of the nonprofits was very conducive to us. And so the producer and I decided that we wanted to do it that way, because we wanted to demonstrate that when we say that, people are lazy thinkers, and, it's all of us, right? It's a human thing. It's not, the right or the religious or the left or atheist, or, it's not any particular group that suffers from this more necessarily. it's a human thing. It's, like we said before, we've evolved both of these ways of thinking, and kind of our knee-jerk reaction is to go with that quick thinking. And so, and we have a tendency to kind of go along with our quick thinking, unless we have some strong reason to not, unless we're given, and like, for example, if I told you that was wrong, then you'd stop and think about it, and exactly what you just did. You're like,
Yeah.
what's going on here? This doesn't quite mesh with my experience. And but even in those cases, I think the motivation of, we were all kind of jumping on the bandwagon, making fun of this
It's so
ridiculous
easy to
practice.
make fun of the Catholic Church, though.
It
It's
is.
just so easy.
Yeah, yeah. And so it was almost second nature just to fall in line, and to do that. And I
Mhm.
was doing the same thing too, right up until that last point at the end. And then, it was just kind of a little, it's like being, having cold water thrown in your face. And
Well,
so,
well, and
sorry, go
I
ahead.
think, but the thing is though that like I think we even complimented you on like being like pointing out that like because we don't like to think that we are biased, especially as skeptics. And
Hmm.
even I know that's a bunch of bullshit. like I'm biased every day. You can't because your brain can't keep track of every
Yeah,
single thing, and everything you got to research, that you're just going to make quick decisions. You're going to align with things that hold like your personal values or whatever.
right.
So when you did that, I was like, oh, yeah, thank you, Scott, for reminding me again that I am flawed. So,
But it wasn't so much of your flawed, Helen. It was, look at what we did, look at this thing that we
yeah,
did, and
yeah,
so, um, yeah, I think but the thing is that we fell for the fast thinking trap,
yep,
and you couldn't get further away from the fast thinking need, right? Obviously, we had a week to do our research,
I
and
know.
it was just 4 articles, and it's not it's some amount of work, doing the research, but it's not enough that you're like thinking, oh, how can I cut corners here, or how can I take shortcuts here? It's like, we all had this exact same opportunity. And like I said, it was just kind of a random thing that during my normal research, it just, a link came up from the Church of England. I was like, oh, well, what do they have to say about it? And then I was
Right,
like, ooh, I experienced the same thing that you all experienced when we were recording. I experienced at that moment when I was reading, and I was like, how could I be so stupid? But it's
right.
really, but I wasn't being stupid. I was just being a human being.
Yeah, that is true. And I think that too, like because whenever we're wrong, or somebody points out a bias or whatever, like the natural tendency is to be like a little bit defensive, because it's um because like especially is wrapped up in a value that you have, it can feel like an attack on the self. But I don't think that's true. um uh,
Yeah, I
and the
agree.
reason
I
why I don't
agree.
think it's true, the reason why I don't think it's true is that it's just it is that we are all prone to this. It is, one of the things that we do. um because our minds, we want to take shortcuts,
Hmm.
because especially if you're an ADHD person and you gotta like like it's either over analytical, or like I'm changing the channel really fast and I can't keep track.
Right, right.
So like I have to actively engage that slow thinking
Hmm.
unless I become hyper focused. Other than that, I have to, because my brain will move on to the next thing. And but also because, like, the example that you gave on the episode that we did is that we tend to think that we are correct in our thinking, especially if it aligns with a value.
Right.
Like, well, the Catholic Church is terrible. Like, I'm like, this seems a little silly, but does it seem like something that the Catholic Church would do? Kind of. The Church of England would do.
Yeah.
Kind
Yeah.
of.
Yeah. Especially in the context of the nonprofits,
Yeah.
excuse me, we're always talking about stories where, various church members from different churches are doing these horrible things, or saying these horrible things, or promoting these horrible ideologies. And so it was very easy to, it's very much an easy thing for us to do, to kind of get into that rut again, that familiar rut. We've been down this road before. We know how the story ends. Well, let's just let's just do our job, and we'll move on. Not to mention the fact that it's four atheists all kind of cheering each other on as we pile on the story. And that actually is an excellent uh, segue into the second book that I want to recommend, which is now I'm in the middle of reading this book, and so I'm not entirely done. I've gotten through most of it, but it's rivaling the Daniel Kahneman book.
You
By the
have
way,
time to read?
I'm listening to audio book on the second
Okay, yeah.
one,
Because like
but
I'm trying to get like David's gonna be on my show on Thursday, and I've gotten like 3/4 way of the first book. And I've had these books
right.
for like 3 months. And they're
Oh,
not long. These are
right.
not long books. But I get distracted. So
Yeah, no
like when
kidding.
people
Yeah,
have,
I hear
I'm
you
like, you
there.
have time to sit down, read a book.
The
And then
Kahneman
I'm
book actually
impressed.
is super easy to read. It's a very easy read. In fact, it's difficult to put down. And the Kahneman book is full of like little examples demonstrating all the little points that he makes with examples very similar to the one that we did at the beginning. But the second book,
Mhm.
and let me see, I can bring it up here, is called The Scout Mindset. And The Scout Mindset is written by someone by the name of Julia Galef. And Julia Galef used to be, she was a podcaster, and she did a podcast with a philosopher by the name of Massimo Pigliucci, and it was called Rationally Speaking, or Rationally Thinking. I think Rationally Speaking was the name of it. But that was an awesome podcast, and Massimo ended up going off to do something else, and the podcast kind of died after that. But that's how I got hooked on. That's how I got turned on to Julia's stuff, and she went on to start an organization. Oh shoot, what was the name of it? The Center for Critical Thinking or something like that, and they would produce
Who is it? Julia.
Julia Galef, Galef. Here's her. Here's the book is called The Scout Mindset. And
Okay. A Center for Rational Inquiry.
that's it. Yeah. And so what they would do is she would go give talks to, I think she has a TED talk out there, at least one TED talk, maybe more than one. But she would give speeches to organizations. Probably some of those organizations were similar to the ACA, the Atheist Community of Austin. I could totally picture her coming in and giving a talk to all of us. But she would like prepare like lesson plans and things like that for either teachers that are in schools, or
Mhm.
just as a side projects, or maybe an organization wanted to give a lesson, or do an activity or something like that. And so she had been doing that for a while, and I'm glad to see that she's moved on to writing books, because I like Daniel Kahneman. Her book is very, very easy to read. She also has tons and tons of little thought experiments that you can actually, if you go along with the thought experiments, you'll like get caught in these traps. And she's like,
Mhm.
haha, look at what just happened. You just got caught in that trap. How does that feel? And think about what you did. Um not as like a scolding kind of thing, but more as a encouraging self-reflection. But the idea behind the book, this and the name of it, The Scout Mindset, has to do
Mhm.
with these two different mindsets. She calls the first one the soldier mindset. The soldier mindset kind of correlates to the fast thinking that Daniel Kahneman was talking about, where people that think in the soldier mindset, they're going to be defending their beliefs, right? They consider their identity and their belief system as something that
Mm.
requires defense against enemies and against the onslaught, and that kind of thing. And it's characterized by motivated reasoning, tribal thinking, confirmation bias,
Mhm.
definitely a heavy emotional investment in the beliefs. And but on the flip side of that then is the scout mindset. The scout is not necessarily interested in defending the home base and keeping the home fires burning. The scout is interested in getting an accurate survey of the land. The scout goes out to see what's there and to come back with an accurate map. And so the scout mindset is characterized by curiosity, by open-mindedness, a willingness to update one's beliefs based on evidence, intellectual humility, curiosity, focus on understanding reality as it is, and so on. And so, she talks about the difference between in that it's not just it's not like a natural skill that any one person necessarily has. It's something that we can all do, and we can all kind of encourage that scout mindset in ourselves. We naturally default to that soldier mindset. We have that psychological comfort. We prefer to feel right. We have a better self-esteem if we think that we're correct about things. And we feel like you mentioned before, that if our beliefs are tied into our identity, we can even feel personally attacked when somebody questions our beliefs, when really that's not warranted. We talk about on our ACA shows, we talk a lot about how we want to attack the ideas and not the person. And so this is what we're talking about. We want to be able to separate the ideas from the person. But if you're in a soldier mindset, you're standing on the wall, right? You got your rifle and you are protecting the home base. And so because of that psychological comfort, because of that social belonging, because of those cognitive biases that are kind of pushing you in that direction. But we can also we can cultivate a scout mindset in ourselves. We need to encourage ourselves and others about for example, being comfortable with uncertainty, right? Are we okay to not know something? Do we have to know? Do we have to have an answer? Is it important to have an answer even if we're not sure? We also would want to, and this is something that we all failed to do on that episode of the Nonprofits, seek disconfirming evidence. Okay, a scout is going to look for ways that they might be wrong, right? We want to eliminate our false beliefs. We want to eliminate our misconceptions about the landscape and so on. Also, being able to detach our identity from our beliefs. That's something that the scout mindset would do. You don't tie your self-worth into being right all the time. It's better. In fact, it's pretty easy to show that in the long run, it's not so much your ego that's important. It's whether or not you actually are right, whether or not you actually are correct. And because if you sacrifice being correct at the expense of feeling good about what you're thinking, then trouble can happen. If you have incorrect beliefs, when you go on to act in the world, something wrong is going to happen, and it could be dangerous. Right. It could be catastrophic. Another thing that a scout mindset would do would be to use probabilistic thinking rather than thinking all in black and white, right? It's not just a yes or no, but in many cases, the correct answer, the correct path is kind of somewhere in the middle. But so far, and like I said, I'm not done with Julia's book yet, but so far the best thing that I found in that book, and the one concept in the book that elevated it to almost on par with Daniel Kahneman's book, Nobel winning concept work that Kahneman did in that book. By the way, he won a Nobel Prize for economics for those ideas. But Julia talks about reframing, changing your mind. And so, in other words, when you do these things, when you do change your mind because of new evidence, you should feel good about it. You should seek that out. Because if we're wrong about something and then we correct it, we're now better than we were before. You are actually more correct than you were before, right? I mean, right. You hear people say things like, if I make a mistake, definitely point it out, because one of two things is going to happen. Either I'm going to find out that I was right all along, and so then I can feel good about that. Or if I was wrong, now I am wrong, or now I'm right. right? I used to be wrong, and so now I've fixed it, and so now I know more. I know I'm better. I'm more correct than I used to be. And so we're so trained from birth, really, to protect that ego, to build yourself up socially. We're social animals, and I think that's a big part of it too, is that we desire the approval of others, especially people that are close to us, and especially people that are in positions of authority, like our parents or our teachers or our
Mm-hmm.
boss or whatever. And but if we can reframe, we should feel happy about living the mindset, about having that scout mindset, about making corrections. And so it's not so much a blow
Mm-hmm.
to your ego as it is an improvement on your beliefs. And I
Right.
think that,
And
go ahead.
no, I was fine. I was just going to comment on something you said before about like Cara Griffin says, like, get excited about being wrong, because that means you're learning something.
Right.
That you being corrected is not, you can't know everything. It's literally impossible. Um
Right.
it is. You just can't. And there's always going to be someone that knows more on a certain subject than you do. Like, you know more about math than I probably do.
I
Like,
would,
so
I'd bet on, I'd wager on
you're
that.
teaching math. I have a feeling you know more math than I do. I got a vibe. So, like, you want to default to the person that would actually, like, know what they're talking about. Like, if I have someone like you that teaches math, if you correct like a math problem for me or a math concept, I'll go, well, Scott knows what the fuck he's talking about. Of course I was
Hmm.
wrong. you know
or,
and then
or at the
sometimes people
very
correct
least,
you
it'll,
and you're not sure. Please do your research.
yeah, exactly. I mean, if you, even if you don't do the extreme reversal, like you were just
Yeah.
saying, which people do all the time, I think it's a normal thing. But even if you just get to a point where you just question what you thought, that's a step in the right direction. Even if you're like, he said something, I learned it differently, or I remember it differently from my days, back when I was taking my math classes. Um, Maybe I should look into that, and I say that to my students all the time. Don't take my word for it. Look it up, do your research,
Right.
show your work. I say that a lot on our shows here. Show your work, right? And so one way that you can check yourself is to do exactly that. Uh if somebody suggests something that doesn't jibe with your current knowledge base or your current belief system or whatever, you shouldn't have a strong negative reaction like the soldier. You shouldn't slam the door shut and lock it and sound the alarm and call up all the guards. But at the same time, you shouldn't just say, oh, just roll over and say, well,
Mm-hmm.
I suppose it'd be different if you were talking to an expert and that kind of thing. You'd be more justified in reacting that way. But ideally, you'd want your curiosity to be stirred up, right? To me, that's one of my favorite characteristics about myself, is just I'm just insanely curious. I just want to know everything. I want to know all of the things, and I understand that I'm never going to, not even close, but it drives me. It drives my curiosity, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that's there are things that I don't like about myself, but one of the things that I do like about myself is that, and so I feel like I'm lucky in that regard, because it drives me to do that search, to do that, to double check those things and that kind of stuff.
I think, like, I'm very curious about things too. And whenever somebody says, like, don't take my word for it, I always appreciate that. Like, when somebody's like just like I don't know, I could be wrong. Like, I think I'm correct about this, but, like, double check me.
Right.
Like I would say, I'm like, when I say stuff, I'm like, I'm some random girl on the internet. Like, please go do your, like, I know I'm kind of correct about this, but it might have changed. Go look, go look stuff up. Don't listen to me. Because the peer review, everybody. You know,
Exact. Yeah, that's, I
it,
mean,
it,
peer review is that exact process in
yeah,
action right there. I mean, that's just, it's exactly what we were just talking about. Just don't take my word for it. And so if you have your peers reviewing your work in, and when we say peers, we mean other experts in the field or other people that are knowledgeable about that information. And so if you're, there's two things happening there. One is that you're getting your work checked by comparable experts. But the second thing is that if you know ahead of time that your work's going to be scrutinized, that social motivation, that peer pressure, if you will, kind of pushes you. You know ahead of time that they're going to be checking it, so you're thinking, "Oh, I better be spot on with this. I better dot all my I's and cross all my T's." And so I that's a good that's kind of the two-prong bonus of the peer review is the literal, the fact checking aspect of it, but then the motivation for scientists to become better scientists, to make sure that they are not falling prey to the fast thinking and to the cognitive biases and that kind of thing. They're not relying on their pet projects and their emotional responses and things like that. They don't want to be embarrassed in front of the world very often.
right,
And so, I think that's a strong motivator. And I think that's kind of harnessing the fast thinking to support the slow thinking, right? The fast thinking is the knee jerk reaction to what are people going to think? You can harness that to kind of motivate yourself to engage in the slower thinking because you
right.
want to avoid those nasty traps and that kind of stuff.
And like, and there's a lot of, ideas and thoughts that we've held on to for years, that we just think are true.
Hmm.
Um, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but I'm sure if I sat here and thought about it long enough, I would come up with something. But or someone will remind me of something. I'll be like, oh yeah, we thought that for a while. Now I know that's not true. But we automatically say, we automatically go to the default of the thing that we know. And then as soon as someone says, actually, that's not true. And then you're like, what? And then you go look it up and you're like, oh yeah, I was wrong. I've been saying it wrong for years. And and like if your ego's not attached to it, that's like as Sydney pointed out, like once you stop identifying yourself with your beliefs or ideas, like that process becomes a lot more easier. Like I feel uncomfortable for like 2 minutes that I got corrected, and then
Right.
I move on. I'm
Right.
like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what Julia Galef was talking about when she
Yeah.
says you should embrace that feeling. What you've just done is a good thing, and we've kind of trained ourselves to avoid that. We don't, we kind of avoid those situations. We don't want that to happen, but we should want that to happen, both as individuals and as a society. That's how science works. That's how technological advancement works. It's you can't really overstate the effectiveness of that kind of approach. If you're right, that's awesome. If you're wrong, you want to correct yourself. Okay.
Hmm.
You want to actually literally change what you're thinking so that it is in alignment with what is correct rather than trying to just convince everybody that you know what you're doing. Because that's just a recipe for disaster as we are living now these days. And so,
Yeah, because we are on the hellscape. So
yeah, it's hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine a more immediate and larger scale example of the risks of succumbing to lazy thinking. So I suppose to give a blunt answer to your question, why am I concerned about lazy thinking? It's destroying the world, and so
yes.
so we really need to do what we can to turn things around. I mean, I'm hoping that we're at a point where we can still turn things around, but I don't know.
I, I
There's
I think
there's a
I
lot of
think we can
fast
turn the bus
thinkers out
around.
there. What's
I
that?
think we can turn the bus around.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, what do
I'm
you think we
hopeful.
have to do? What do you?
I think also too, like this is something I talked about with John last week. You have to speak people's language to engage with them. Like, again, like, don't talk to a Christian like you would talk to an atheist. Don't, because you're not going to connect in the same way, you know. Like, and I'm not saying dumbing down. That is not what I'm saying, because people that are religious are intelligent. You know, religion and intelligence have nothing to do with each other.
Oh,
So
that's so annoying when people say that. It's just
I hate it.
really,
I
yeah,
don't like
I just can't
hearing
stand
religion
that.
is mental illness, that religious people are stupid, blah blah blah. Because I used to be religious.
Right.
I was still intelligent.
Yeah. It's not like
Yeah,
you all of a
so
sudden got smart after you
I was like,
left
oh my god,
religion.
now I have a brain.
Yeah, yeah. That's a very common misconception, and it's very frustrating to see, because that is also lazy thinking on our side,
Yes.
right? That's lazy thinking on our side, and so by you can be a lazy thinker by pointing at somebody too quickly and calling them a lazy thinker, right? And so I think one of the concepts that Julia talks about in her book is that correcting lazy thinking really starts at home. It really starts with yourself. And I think it was Mark Twain that said something about you're the hardest person to, or you're the easiest person to fool and the hardest person to convince you've been fooled, or something like that. But that's really true.
I bet if I put it into the Google and put full quote.
Yeah, yeah. I keep
Samuel
forgetting
Adams.
that I'm connected to all of the, all human knowledge. That's kind of the joke in our family. Like, if I only had all human knowledge at my fingertips.
It's easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that goes doubly so for yourself too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's convincing somebody else they've been fooled is difficult. Convincing yourself that you've been fooling yourself is a Herculean task. I mean, it's really, really hard. And one thing that we go ahead.
Like, and then you get involved in the sunk cost fallacy,
Yeah,
and you can fall into that trap because you're like,
definitely.
well, like,
I've
well, I
gone this
invested
far,
like
might
years
as
or
well finish it.
time or money or into an idea. So like, I invested all this stuff into it. So like, I got to see it through. And it's like, no, you don't. You don't have to see it through. Like, if it's wrong.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what you want. You're literally on the wrong track here. You're going in the wrong direction. Finishing this off that's not a good thing, right? You're going in the wrong direction.
No, you don't have to keep buying into the MLM. Like, you could just leave it.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I was going to say though, that it's being able to recognize in yourself when this is happening, it's difficult, but you can do it. And I'll give you an example. As I mentioned, I'm from Minnesota, and our former senator, Al Franken, had a little bit of an issue a few years ago, which is really unfortunate, because I really like Al Franken.
I really liked Al Franken.
Yeah, as a politician and as a comedian, he was freaking hilarious. But and he was always very good at just laying things out as they are. Of course, I was biased because I liked him, and so maybe that might have just been the way I saw him.
But I just think of what's going on now, and I'm just like,
right, yeah. It seems like what he did was really nothing, right? But so back in the day, I actually was expecting that he would run for president, and obviously he didn't. And but it was right around, there was a moment in time where a photo came to light of when he was on, this was when he was a comedian before his political career. He was on a USO tour or something, and he was making an inappropriate gesture towards a female reporter that was asleep in a chair next to him. And based off of that, he was pressured to retire, or to quit being a senator, basically, which he did. But I knew when the day that happened, I felt really horrible. But I had this great idea, and I'm so glad that I did because it was so valuable to me, this experience. Is
Mhm.
I was like, okay, I'm about to see tons of articles talking about how horrible Al Franken is and how he's done these things and how he should be retiring and so on. Um, and so I said, I'm not going to avoid those articles. I'm going to go in and I'm going to watch my own reaction. Right.
Right.
I knew that I was going to react to these stories. I'm going to want to scroll past them. I'm going to want to ignore them. I'm going to want to not think about that. I'm going to want to turn it over to more Al Franken friendly coverage and that kind of thing. But I went in and I jumped in and, I read through those articles, and it was really, I don't know, I thought it was cool. I'm a huge nerd, but I thought it was really cool just
I'm a nerd.
wa- I watching myself react. I mean, I could literally
Mhm.
feel myself wanting to scroll past the page, and instead of doing it, I just forced myself to read this, and I was like, this is what it feels like when you're doing that fast thinking. This is what it feels like. I could feel my body, not just my thoughts, but I could feel it like in my chest, pushing me, urging me to just keep scrolling and move on. And it was really fascinating. And what it did though is it gave me a little peek behind the curtain as to how Scott works. I really lucked out that occurred to me at that time because it was a fascinating experience. So I would encourage that to anybody out there, no matter what your ideology is, no matter what your thoughts are, no matter which way you lean politically or whatever, if something happens that you're not going to like, go and read the articles that you're not going to like and watch how you react. Pay attention to how
It
your
is
body feels.
not a great feeling. I'll
Yeah,
tell you that because
it's definitely not a great feeling.
not a sponsor, but I do have a subscription to Ground News because especially since we do nonprofit articles, I'm trying to find the most factual ones.
Uh-huh.
That are like somewhere in the centrist or are verified to be fact checked and stuff because I don't want us to put out I'm trying to make sure that we're not putting out biased information I really try. Plus, like, also too, I want to be well informed and I want to see what other sides are thinking and stuff like that. And still, your urge, like when I like, because on the blind spot feature, they'll because they know I'm a leftist. They know. They know I'm a progressive. They know. The algorithm has figured hell out. Anywho, but if you read the right wing stuff and you do a compare and contrast, your urge is to not read it. Because it is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it because it creates it's not rational. Like it's emotional. And that's the whole thing about the way the news cycle works. It has nothing to do with facts. It has nothing to do with um what's really going on. It's what's going to get clicks. And how do you get clicks? You appeal to emotion. You're not going to feel to someone's logic
Right.
because that's not the world we live in.
Yeah. Oh, I just saw AJ was commenting that I'm not in the tent anymore, so maybe I can put the tent back on here.
Okay. Oh yeah, I have the
There we
tent.
go. Just in case of rain, I was outside enjoying the beautiful northern lights out there, and
Exactly.
this is Minnesota. The weather's going to be different tomorrow, so I'll get it back inside the tent here.
No, you're on your break.
Yep, exactly. But yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, we can almost see kind of this the same thing happening to our entire news system. We respond to we love getting positive emotional feedback. We don't like having to do the work to do it right. And now we see kind of our news systems kind of succumbing to that same thing. It's a battle for the dollar, right? And so they're realizing that reporting facts and being objective is good. It's good for our society that we have news sources like that, but it doesn't get the clicks. It doesn't get the money rolling in. It doesn't get the advertising dollars coming in. And so it's it's exactly like a human being, but on a larger scale. We want to have those positive, that those little brain chemical kickbacks when we do those things that we think we're supposed to do, that make us feel emotionally good, make us feel emotionally strong, and that kind of
I
thing.
like dopamine.
Yeah, yeah. Who doesn't, right? Who wouldn't, right? And
Right,
so
like, yeah, there's a whole group of people that like dopamine so much that they screwed up their dopamine system. So,
yeah, yeah. And so, but we need to
we
be
really like it.
careful. We need to be
Yeah, you
careful
gotta be
because
careful.
we're going, it's, I don't know. I don't, if we keep down this road, I can't imagine, as bad as
It
it is
can't go anywhere
now.
good.
Yeah, we're going to be looking back at today thinking, oh, those were the good old days. Just like now,
Oh
we're
my
looking
God,
back and
no,
say,
please don't let these be the good old days.
just now, now we're like, oh, remember the good old days when George Bush was in the White House, and at the
And
very
he did
least
war crimes, and we were okay with it.
it was,
It's
I don't know. I
insane.
mean, I think it would be very easy to make a good argument that we're still way better than we are now. In it's I don't know. It's
Well, like I said this to Seth, and I keep saying it, and I've said this before on the nonprofits. Like, it's a double-edged sword. The society we live in, we have access to all the information, but we also have access to all the information, which means we
right.
have access to bad information. And if
Yep.
people aren't engaging their slow thinking, because we're aware that we do this, and we try to do better, and we're like, okay, like, yeah, you know what, I'm like, I was just going off feelings,
Yeah.
and
Right.
we have the maturity to go, I was going on feelings, or I didn't, like, I just kind of scrolled past it, or I shared something that wasn't true. And when someone corrects me, I'm like, okay. And I usually take the shit down off my page if I post something that's not correct. And I
Hmm.
usually be like, I'm sorry, this was bad, because I'm not going to research every single fucking thing. Um, this is what we all do. It's fine. Nobody's judging you for it. You don't have to research every goddamn thing. You're gonna fuck up. That's fine. But the whole point is that when you're corrected, then you go, I'm sorry. Actually, thank you for pointing out I was wrong.
Right.
But you and I know how to do that. Most people
Right.
don't. Because as soon as you share something, or you have any dissent, it is, you're attacking me, and then it turns into whataboutisms and all this other shit. And it's just like, I'm just pointing out that the sun doesn't revolve around the earth. That's all
Hmm.
I'm saying.
Right. Yeah.
That is not correct.
Something controversial like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, but you mentioned dopamine before. I mean, basically,
Yeah.
we're drug addicts pretty much. We'll do anything for that dopamine
Mm-hmm.
hit, and truth be damned, it's all about propping up our egos and feeling good. And I think one of
Mm-hmm.
the drawbacks to our current society is that not only do we have all the information at our fingertips, but now we're in a instant gratification kind of a society where we can basically get whatever we want at a moment's notice. We can go on to Amazon and get an order shipped to our house that night, right? And
Yep.
so we
Yep.
get all this instant feedback, and so you might be thinking, why bother? Why do the work? And that's actually why I wear this t-shirt to my classes on occasion.
Yep. Yep. I think that's great.
Yeah, I mean, we need to, as Julia points out in her book, we need to kind of reframe this idea that let's get the instant buck, let's be the superstar musician, the superstar athlete, go straight to the top. We're gonna go pro straight out of high school or even before, and we don't, as a society, we don't value the long win, the long hard win. One of the activities that I just love doing, and I haven't been able to go in many years, but I love canoeing. I love canoeing out in the wilderness. And so in Minnesota, we are very, very fortunate. I say this almost with a tear in my eye, because we're now at a place where this wonderful wilderness is at risk. But we have the Boundary Waters Canoe Area.
Yeah.
It's a national park in northern Minnesota and in parts of Canada. But that whole concept there is you work your ass off during the day and then you get to look back and enjoy. I mean, it's nobody likes having cold, wet feet all day and carrying canoes and that kind of stuff. It's hard work. It's painful at the time. It's cold at the time. It's exhausting at the time. But when you're done with it, it's just sitting at that campfire at the end of the day, with your coffee or with your drink or whatever, and you got the nice campfire going, just like we have here behind us. It's just so hanging out with some friends. One of my friends likes to pull out cigar and that kind of stuff, and some of my other friends like to pull out other stuff, and that's awesome. But just having that moment, I mean, it's just you look back and you're like, that it was a lot of hard work, but it was just so worth the effort. And we've lost, and we've lost a lot of that these days. I think with this instant gratification just really takes away from the appreciation of those hard fought victories. And the sad thing is all of the best victories are hard fought victories. There are very, very, very few and far between instant. I mean, nope, there's
nothing that is
hardly
ever worth
anybody goes
doing
pro out of high
is
school.
ever easy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite quotes. Like, because it's not anything that I've achieved in my life. I worked the ones that I worked for always were the ones that gave me the most gratification.
Exactly.
And I can look back like I did that. Like I went to college, I learned a new skill. I learned how to do a podcast, like all these different things, like because you're building on new things. And also this is how you keep your gray matter, everybody. Because those new connections, and you have to keep doing it throughout your life, because if you don't work it, you're going to lose it. That's why I like, playing a musical instrument takes years, especially as you get older, because those pathways need to be rewired. This is just brain stuff, but it's also the most gratifying because we do get the dopamine hit when we do an achievement, so it's the same thing as like getting instant gratification, except it's like long-term end.
Right.
Yeah.
And it makes it doubly difficult because evolution also is very goes after the short
path
goal.
of least resistance.
Right. Takes exactly. The path. That's a nice way of putting it. The path of least resistance. Right. And whatever these small incremental improvements. That's why evolution takes so long, is because it doesn't really see the long-term goal. It doesn't know that, well, if you sacrifice this and this, and if you take this risk and so on, then you're going to be in a much better situation down the road. Evolution just looks at the road in front of it, and that's it. Which arrangement is going to give me one step on my competitor, and that kind of thing. And so that kind of thinking, is kind of, it kind of takes us over, and even if somebody is aware, or even if somebody does believe that, working for the long-term goal is the way to go, you and I can talk about that all day, but chances are within 24 hours, we're going to be taking the shortcut. We're going to be doing the fast thinking. We're going to be, doing the exact opposite of what we preach. And that's just that's just everyday human being thing. That's just, we all do that.
I mean, we constantly say, like, I say it, it's like, you're going to do it. Like we are all prone to bias. We're all prone to fast thinking. It is not a judgment on anybody, because we all do it. It's just that we know that we do it, and we will sometimes, not all the time, we'll be like, you know what, I'm like, maybe I don't know about this is the way I thought I did, or maybe I should think about this a little more. Like, how did I come to that conclusion? Like, does that makes it's kind of like how people, let go of belief. It's like, once they get a little bit of street epistemology, it's like, why do I believe that? Like, why did I buy that? Like, is that true? it's the same sort of way thinking, rationalize our way through something.
Right.
And the thing is that our brains aren't really built for that. Like it's a learned skill.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, our brains are nothing but duct tape and, super glue, basically. It's just band-aids. Our brains are just,
And chewing gum, just stick
yeah.
like
Yeah,
just
it's
sticking it
exactly. It's like
together.
what can fix this problem? Oh, we'll slap some duct tape on that. Well, what can fix this problem? Oh yeah, jam that chewing gum in there. That'll hold it together. As long as you have
Right.
these, as long as you're just a little bit smarter, a little bit faster than the next person, then you're going to survive, and they're not. And so that, that's why we're in this mess, basically. And so I don't know. It makes me wonder. On one hand, it seems like we have been betrayed by our own by our own mother nature, right? It seems like we've been given inclinations that are self-destructive, but we're fortunate enough that we've now developed to a point where we are able to see those long distance goals, and we just need to retrain our thinking, which, like I said, I thought was the most awesome concept I've seen out of that Scout Mindset book. Is that, you know, I think if that's going to be our solution, I think if we can retrain ourselves to appreciate the hard work, to appreciate that those worthwhile goals that we have to work our asses off to get to, if we embrace thinking harder because it makes you a better thinker, it makes you
Mm-hmm.
you'll be more right more often. And I think, if we can tie in that social feedback, that social uh what's the word I'm looking for, the social support of, right, our social cues are pushing us to take the fast way, or to take the easy
Right.
way out, and to get the quick buck, and that kind of thing. But
It's
if we
social
can,
pressure.
yeah, exactly. And if we can reprogram that, people in America, some people in America talk about how our education is so crappy. And I disagree. And I'm biased. I'm a teacher. I worked in a public high school for many years, and I work in a public college now. But I think we have the best educational system we've ever had. And for me, it seems like it's really a societal attitude towards education. It's that fast buck mentality, and becoming a better citizen, becoming a smarter person, becoming a more thoughtful citizen of the world and of the earth, caretaker of our world, and that kind of thing. It takes hard work. It takes hard work. You have to think hard about hard problems. And, getting my students to do a word problem is like pulling teeth. And
Well,
it's because the
it's
hard part.
hard. Like I
Yeah,
remember, like I'll tell you, like trying
sure.
to, even as a full grown adult, trying to get my kid to do a word problem and working it through with them. It is hard because, like, if you do 2 + 2 = 4, that's easy. But having to read the word problem and like analyze it, that requires more thinking. And it's like, and also showing your work, like, because I remember this too as a neurospicy person, is that we have a way of processing numbers differently than, it's just a thing.
Hmm.
I noticed. um and I would get the answer, and my teacher would be like, well, what did you do? I go, well, the way that I did it, you didn't explain it that way.
Right.
And he wanted me to write. I'm like, I don't remember what you said. I go, I just got the answer, and it was correct, but I don't remember how I got there. And then I had a college professor, which was my saving grace, where he did 3 different problems, 3 different ways. He had a problem, did 3 different ways, and then he's like, you can solve this problem like 3 different ways, and this is how you do it, and we go through steps. And I'm like, where were you when I was in high school?
Right.
And it wasn't because I was wrong. It's just that someone didn't explain to me how I was coming to certain conclusions.
Well, you were able to take it. You knew enough about your own thinking process that you could, and you knew that you had, your own ways of working.
Right.
Um, and you learn to take advantage of that. You learn to lean into it, right? You know, if you're driving a car and you know the wheels always push you a little bit to one side, you learn to compensate by aiming a little bit to the other side, right? And that's
Right.
kind of what you were doing there. Is you know, your brain processes things perhaps a little differently. I don't want to say differently than other people, because we're all different, right?
It's just
Um,
different brain. It's just everybody's got different brains,
right,
and
differently than maybe than was assumed, right? And
right.
so, you know, we it's very easy for teachers too. We're human too, but it's very easy for us to think this is how people think about things, and not realize that, you know, there's probably most of the people in that room would disagree with you, and would say, well, I kind of do, but I kind of do it differently. Or and then we might have somebody says, no,
Right. Everybody's
I
got
totally think it did. I have to arrange things in my mind spatially, and I need to approach things this way. You know, it's and so what you were just talking about was kind of a success story in a way, because you learned to compensate for those kind of things, but you did it by the deep analysis of yourself. You didn't just
right.
follow you didn't just follow the easy way that you were thinking. You were like, okay, I know if I just follow my instincts, I'm going to get this wrong. So I need to think about how can I structure this differently? How can I frame the problem in a different way, so that way I can apply my unique thinking style to it,
Right.
and come up in the right direction. And so kudos for you for that. But you know, I think we need to, you know, I wish that we could, I wish we could be a world of Helens that are all doing the same thing. We look at you know, our movements and our thoughts and our actions as a society. If we could learn to compensate for our own shortcomings, then
If,
that would be
get some
awesome.
therapy and take some psychology courses because that's what it really got me to do it, because therapy forces you to look at the way you think.
Hmm.
Because I've done a lot of kind of behavioral therapy. So and it's helped
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
And also too, like learning how the brain works, like how we think, you know, thinking fast and slow. That we are emotional creatures, we are not rational creatures.
Right.
Emotions are our default because that's what kept us alive. you
I would
know,
say we're emotional creatures that are capable of
okay.
rational thinking.
Rational thinking, yeah. Like I'm just saying, our default is emotion.
Right.
Is
Yes. Oh,
emotion.
without a doubt. Yeah.
Yeah. But because we have higher thinking, that's why we have, you know, airplanes. So like
Yeah.
it could be both. You know,
Right.
like, you know, somebody like, you know, people before the Wright brothers, and you know, being a long ass time trying to figure out how we're going to get off the fucking ground, and eventually someone like figured out the physics, and you know, after trial and error, you know, got a plane to go off the ground, you know, and now we have a huge system where it's all over the world where everybody flies somewhere, you know, every day, you know, at all
Yeah.
hours of the day. And
Right.
like there's airplanes in the air right now. So the way I'm kind of looking at it is just like it can be both. You can be an emotional, irrational meat bag.
I'm just looking up
And
what
you can make
year
an
was the
airplane.
Wright. So the Wright brothers did their flight in 1903, and then we were
Yep.
on the moon in 1970.
That's not that
Right.
long. That's
That's not that long.
that is how old my brother is.
It's almost been
My
that
brother's
long since
64.
1970, right? It's been what, 50,
67.
50.
My brother's 67 because I'm 47. Yeah, so as old as my brother is. 67
So
years.
yeah, so it's almost been as the time distance between Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, and the Wright brothers,
Mhm.
and humans walking on the moon was almost the same as the time between now and when we were
Mhm.
on the moon. And
Right.
what have we done? We haven't even gone back to the moon yet, right? I mean, we have what do we have, like a dozen people or 15 people that have been on the moon, and now we're just
Yeah.
starting to now we're crashing you know, rovers into the moon now. And you know, it's
It's
really
fast.
what's that?
It's just but we also launched this James Webb telescope. So, you know.
That's true. That's true.
So,
But
you know, like payoffs.
How hard would it have been to do both, though? I think. I
I
think
know, I
if we had done
know.
both, we might even be further. We might be you and I might be having this discussion with one of us on Mars, at the time.
I know.
Who knows? Who
Yeah.
knows?
Well, I like to save our planet first before we go to Mars. Just saying. Like,
Right. Right. Yeah. If
let's
we can
save
make
here
another
first.
planet habitable, we can fix what we got going on here. And so I
Like,
don't
if all
know.
the billionaires want to go to Mars, I'm fine. You can
Just
go
call
there.
that the
Have your
yeah, just
weird little, oligarch hierarchy, terraform Mars. Go ahead. Go do it.
right, right.
I supported this. But
Well,
it's like, but it is one of those things, like, how far could we get if we could just get people to just stop and think? Because, like, it is one of those things that, when you're when you're having an emotional reaction, I try to, like, it's post hoc, but I'll go, why did I react that way?
mhm,
And some of it is emotional triggers, some of it is, I was just very emotionally invested in something and I didn't want to let go of the bone.
mhm.
But the thing is, though, is that especially if there's a social consequence, I'm a little more likely to go, why did I behave that way? Why was this idea so fucking important to me in this moment that I acted
Right,
like a butthead? You know? And I think there has to be more of that. That
right.
you're gonna act like a butthead sometimes. Everybody does. And it's perfectly fine. Just admit that you acted like a butthead instead of holding on to an idea. Just
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah, and that goes along exactly with what we're talking
Yeah.
about, how like a religious person or somebody who disagrees with you politically or
Mm.
whatever, they're not necessarily mentally ill, they're not necessarily evil, they're not necessarily amoral. They just are either seeing things differently than you, or they haven't. I mean, being able to do that kind of self-reflection, like you were just saying about what you just did, I think what you were just talking about was super awesome, and I think it's because, I mean, I think you're an incredible human being, Helen, but
I do.
um,
I think you're incredible too, Scott.
I don't think that I don't think it's insulting to say that you're not a superhuman, right? And so
Please, no. I don't want to
you
be an X-Men. They have a lot of trauma.
that's true. That's true. That's pretty risky work.
Yeah, I don't mean
Um,
X-Men.
but
I'll just be me.
you were fortunate enough to have a curiosity and have a drive to understand yourself, to understand, to think that you just said, why did I react that way? Whoever says, not, I don't think very many people say that kind of thing to themselves on a regular basis. And so that the idea of self-reflection, I think
Or
is
they'll
really key
blame
there.
somebody else. Like, oh, well, they made
Exactly.
me mad. And it's like, well, I understand that mad's emotion, but why did it make you mad?
Yeah,
You
that's the
know,
soldier
like, because,
mindset
like,
right
unless
there.
someone's personally calling you, like, personally insulting you,
Hmm.
rather than, like, if someone's personally insulting you, they're perfectly justified in being angry. I would be angry too. I'm angry a lot. But my point is that if it's a different idea, like my example, like, the sun revolves around the earth. Now, in the grand context of things, that, like, if you think that, I don't know what happened to your science education, I'm concerned. But at the end of the day, that doesn't hurt my feelings, but if somebody gets angry at that, I'm like, why are you
Right.
angry? Because that has nothing to do with you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
I'm
know,
like,
and
are you mad at the education system because this person thinks that the, the sun revolves around the earth? Because that's where my concern would be. Like, where did you learn that?
right.
Like, why are you, like, we thought that 500 years ago, 600 years ago. And then, Galileo and some other really smart people were like, no, actually, it's the opposite.
Right.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, but I mean, if you think about it, we know exactly why they're reacting that way. But it's because they're tied into their beliefs. They consider, we give ourselves labels just as much as we give other people labels. And so if you've labeled yourself to as a flat earther, or as a geocentric believer, you believe that the earth is the center of the universe, you kind of tie yourself into that becomes part of you. And I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense that would become part of you unless you think of it in evolutionary terms. If we
mhm.
in anything that can be used to bring people together and glue people together, even if the thing gluing them together is faulty or bad or whatever, if it has the practical effect of attracting people into a group,
Yep.
that group becomes more able to survive than the free thinker down the road that's by themselves, right? And so
That's how
anything,
cults form.
exactly, that's how cults form, and that's how um that's how we evolve to be these these
But that's
irrational
also how we
beings.
become fans. Like we're in a D&D cult. Like there's a little cult elements to, and like when you play D&D or you're into a musician or whatever, this is all the same dynamics. It's just that like because like there's certain nomenclature that you can use in D&D. People that don't play D&D, like if I'm like, you failed your charisma check, like exactly what I'm saying, but as someone that doesn't play D&D is like, what are you talking about?
Right.
And those are wording and things of people that are in like fan groups and cults that were tribal. I'm not saying
Right.
there's anything wrong with this. But
Right.
there's always little cult dynamics and little and social groups. If you're really into like certain hobbies or music or movies or whatever, like there's little
Right.
things that that's part of our social bond.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, is that like if you're not analyzing it, going like if you get very emotionally attached to Dungeons and Dragons, and so emotionally attached that it's causing distress, like you're so addicted to it, you're not going to work. I'm worried about you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
those people exist.
Right. And in addition to that, in addition to just being addicted to gameplay or whatever, I mean,
Yeah.
I've just a few minutes ago, I called myself a nerd. There, I was putting myself in a group there. I was
Yeah.
lumping myself in with a social group, and I was saying I consider this to be part of my identity, and I do consider that to be part of my identity. I try not to, I do find myself wincing when people use the word nerd in a derogatory way, and we also kind of, there's that
But all the nerds made Silicon Valley, so there you
well, that
go.
you can't argue with that, right? We were just talking
So
about going to the moon too, and that was brought to you by nerds.
yeah,
Right.
all the
And
nerds, the guys that
yeah.
are playing D&D and also doing and like kicking butt at the science fair, those guys.
Right, right,
Like,
exactly. They're not scoring the touchdown, they're not, being the prom king or queen or whatever. They're not,
you don't want
you
to score the
know,
touchdown anyway because you're going to get brain damage, and then you can't go to the moon.
I
Right?
used to love playing football when I was young. I was a football fanatic. I just loved playing it. I loved
Mhm.
I loved the strategy aspect of it, and I was actually pretty good. But then around fifth grade or so, the other guys started growing bigger, and I stayed
Right?
small, right?
Yeah.
And so then, by the time I played, all through junior high, and I actually joined my high school football team, and I went to like one or two practices, and I was like, no, I'm a 12-year-old playing football with grown men, basically. And I was like, no, that's just
Yeah,
not going
no.
to happen.
um well, like I found out when I was a kid, I did very good at skiing. I did competitive skiing in high school. Don't put me on a team sport. Just don't. Because I'm not good. Because like I was the kid like when we played soccer that I would score the goal into the other team's goal
Hmm.
because it was just easier than to like fight my way through the opposite. And I did a season and I was just like, I hated it. I
Mm.
was just, I am not good with team sports. um Solo sports fine.
Yeah.
I'm good solo,
That's,
perfectly fine.
actually,
Don't put me on a team.
that's what attracted me to Taekwondo. I've been doing
Yeah.
Taekwondo for almost 40 years, and it was because
Yeah.
of my experiences on team sports when I was in, junior high and high school, is that I was just this small, I mean, I'm still not a big guy. Well, I mean, big as in like chubby, I'm fat, but it's not like I'm a big muscle bound guy, but I just loved Taekwondo because it was all about self-improvement. It was all about self-awareness. It was all about beating what you were doing last time. It was all about challenging yourself and not so much about, you know, being part of this. And plus, they had weight groups and age groups. And so you were
Right,
fighting
and that
against,
makes a huge difference
right,
too.
in a
Yeah.
competition, you're fighting people that are kind of on your same level. Now, here I am in my mid 50s, and I was a little runt when I was a 12-year-old, but now I'm, relatively youthful in my 50s. And so now if I face somebody my same age, it's like, oh, okay. I'm not I doesn't seem fair the other direction now. And so I
Right.
suppose what goes around comes around, right? Everybody has their own time to shine. And I look on Facebook and I see my high school classmates all going gray and that kind of thing. And
Oh my God,
I have
it's
some gray
really
coming in
weird.
here, but I'm holding on to
I
my
mean,
hair. I'm
this
holding
is
on.
all fake, everybody. I don't even know what my original color is anymore. It's mostly gray, but I'm not aging gracefully.
Yeah.
I refuse to. But like, it is one of those things. Like, just a
Well, that's
sidebar. Like,
because you're youthful of mind. You're youthful of
I
mind, and
am.
that's
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I also have good skin, but like, it's one of those things though. Like that. Stay out of the sun. Become a vampire. Don't go in the sun. I was a goth. Didn't go in the sun.
Yeah.
Save my skin. But I will tell you that, like, if you like, like when I would look back at my Facebook photos, or and I see people my age, I'm like, do I look a little old? And I was like, everybody's like, no. I'm like, okay, because it is one of those things that is, it gives you like that relativeness, because like everything's 10 years ago to me. High school was
Right.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
was
tell me
30.
about it. Yep. I
It
hear
was
you.
10 years ago.
You know,
but
I wonder if
but
if everybody feels that way, or if it's just because of the fact that our lives have overlapped the millennia
well,
switch.
I'm a zennial, because I was born in 77.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a good portion of my childhood without the internet, but I've
Right.
lived most of my life with my internet, because like it came out in like 96, between 95 and 97. I was like between like 17 and 19, 20 years
Okay.
old when the internet. So I've had most of my life I've been on the internet. But the beginning of my life wasn't. So it's like that in between time. Yeah,
Okay.
because the internet was such a big generational shift.
Right.
Like millennials was the first generation that they were online. They don't know an existence without the internet. I
Right.
haven't. I know that time.
Yeah, I
I
think
know. I know.
I got a decade on you. So I'm like firmly entrenched Generation X, born in the
Yeah.
60s, raised in the 70s, high school in the
See, I was born in
80s.
late 70s, raised in the 80s, teenager
Right.
in the 90s. That was all my time. Like my husband was born in 69, so he's like, hardcore Gen X,
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I get it. But tying this back to like we were talking about before, I remember when I was in high school, I took a lot of English and history because that's like my jam.
Mm-hmm.
I do really go. I because it was book analysis. Like I had to analyze stories and write essays on them,
Mm-hmm.
and look at things on a deeper level. And then I had a really great English teacher, Mr. Mulvey, and he would be like, okay, he's like, we're gonna read this book, like we read like Siddhartha, okay, by Herman
Mm-hmm.
Hesse, and then he said, we're gonna look at some other texts, like about Buddhism, and also what other people wrote about this book.
Mm-hmm.
To give us to explain like how do you analyze literature.
Right.
Because and this is high school, but he was trying to give us those like building blocks to like look at, like we're going to read a text and we're going to read this book and we're going to be like, okay, we're going to see what other people wrote about it, how they analyzed it, and then I want you to write your own analysis or whatever, and that's got me to think like to do that slow thinking, because we could have just absorbed the text and just
Right.
wrote what we thought. He wanted us to read other things so we would have different perspectives to come from.
Right. And by
Yeah.
doing that, he was forcing you to do that deep thinking.
Yeah.
Comparing, comparative literature, comparing something to something else is not an easy thing to do. And it's not something that we would naturally do. Naturally, we focus on one thing and we go with it and we run with it and we take it whichever direction we want or whatever. But drawing back, looking for commonalities, looking for contrast, looking for, you know, common themes, that kind of thing. And it's not something that we're prone to do. And I suppose it's coming all circle, right? That this is part of the
Yeah.
reason why, why I feel that we need to have that, we need to embrace that scout mindset, and we need to feel positive about when we get corrected. We need to feel, we need to reward ourselves for doing that kind of thing, rather than just relying on the, on the programmed responses that we have. And I, I'll grant it that it's a very, very difficult road to take. We're fighting
I'm glad I
again.
learned it when I was younger. I like learning it now would be, in my
Right.
40s would be a lot harder.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Definitely. That's why we need to incorporate some of this stuff into our schools. And the way things are going these days, I don't hold out. Well, that's not true. When I look at the news, I don't have a lot of hope. When I talk to my fellow teachers, I do have,
I when
I
I
can lean
talk
on them.
to people that like are actually on the front line, like they're like it's different, than what the news is reporting. Like the people that are actually experiencing things.
Right.
It's just like, yeah, it's bad, but there's also like it's not as bad as it could be.
Right. Right.
Because I think also too, like this is the thing, like we talk about, as activists, is that you got to find your thing. One, find your thing, what you're going to do. Two, do the thing. Because it's not going to just be people like, do protests. Like if that's your thing, donate money, donate time, whatever it is. If you can educate someone, educate them.
Right.
Like there's something that you can do, even if it's just like one person. If it's one person, that's okay. Like you did your job.
Right.
I would encourage you to keep going, but like that it's going to be small incremental steps, like
If everybody would do that, the world would change rapidly.
yeah, I would. Just small incremental steps to just take one person and be like, hey, you know what, let's look at maybe why MAGA isn't the best thing.
Right.
Just have a conversation.
Right.
Like maybe just be nice to trans people. Like, like let's have that conversation.
Yeah, let's treat other human beings like they're human beings.
Yeah.
That's not an
That's not
earth-shattering,
hard.
yeah, that it's not, we're not coming out of left field with this.
I'm not going to tell you to do a political analysis of every single, political structure and like why, like I'm not asking you to read Karl Marx.
Right.
But I think also too, like if we're having these conversations, we, as you point, we also have to be aware of our own biases. Like I am not the smartest person in the room. I'm intelligent and I am smart. But that kind of means the same thing. But anyway.
Not necessarily. That could mean different things, but I get what you're saying. Yeah.
But okay, like I have a big brain. But I always tell people, don't listen to me. Like if you're like, if I say something, like if I say something obvious, like the sky is blue, okay, please, like you don't need to correct me. But if I start saying something like, a lot of trans people are autistic, which is, I've noticed in my friend group, a lot of my trans friends are neurodivergent, but that doesn't make it true.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just an observation. So please don't say what I say is gospel.
Right.
Because correlation is not causation.
Right. Yeah, that's for sure. That's that's something that comes up, and I teach statistics as well, and that's I try to hammer that in as much as I can.
That was one of my favorite math class, and I did really well in statistics.
Yeah,
Not so much algebra.
That's a hard class because statistics is. I love teaching statistics. In fact, when I first applied for my current job, during my interview, I told them I love teaching statistics and I love teaching calculus, and the main reason is they're both weird. They both take the way people normally think about things and spin it and and turn it on its.
I don't know. Like when I took statistics, it was almost instinctive. I don't know why, because I didn't take it to college, because you have to take I had to take part of my psych degree. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to do statistics. And I just got it. Like, like something about the way because it was very analytical and that's the way my brain works, where like algebra is like it goes against like the way that my brain works. Like algebra, geometry I did a little bit easier on, but algebra, nah. But the way that statistics work out, because it's very analytical and you're looking at data, and then how do we analyze data, how do we take statistics, and I went to a research-based college. So that was like every course, even if I wasn't taking statistics, like we have to take statistics into consideration, and we're going to talk about it. By the time I got to, like, I was in my sophomore year when I was taking stats, I just, boom, I was like, I get this. This makes perfect sense.
I think that it must align, like you said, it just aligns with the way that you're thinking, and I think that you're not alone there. I've had students that have had ADHD in the past that have been able to be successful because depending on your particular flavor of ADHD, you might very often it involves like we hear people talk about the channel changing thing, but very often it's just following paths, following down different pathways and being able to do that rapidly. If you do that a lot, you're used to being kind of on your heels and being, kind of backing up and being unsure of yourself. You're comfortable in that space where you're kind of trying to figure out what to do because you probably missed what was told to you before. Excuse me.
Right.
Or maybe you forgot, or maybe you were moving. Maybe by the time they finished their sentence, you were already moving on to 2, 3, 4 points ahead, and that kind of thing. So if you're in a situation,
you have to
where
force yourself to think slow when you have ADHD.
exactly, and
You have to force yourself. Like
and
I
so
like
you
that's
get good at it. So you get good at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's good. I think in statistics, it's not. I tell my students all the time, when you're doing a statistics project or solving a statistics problem, the statistics is the easy part. The math is the easy part. And it's the figuring out what math to do. That's the hard part. And so that's right there. That's the difference between the fast thinking and the slow thinking. Students so often tell me, just tell me how to do it. Just tell me how to do it. Give me the procedure. Tell me the steps. What are the steps?
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, but I don't want to.
I'm teaching you the steps,
Right? But even more so, teaching you the steps is part of it. Yeah, and that's an important part of it. But also learning which steps to take when and in which direction, that's part of it. And so if you're comfortable in a situation where you have 1,000 different directions that you can go and you want to go in all of them, right? You want to, you want to go down that path, but you've already explored all of those paths because your brain went off and took all possible, you checked out all of you had all of the conversations already, right? You've tried everything already because that's the way your brain works. I didn't even finish reading the problem yet, and you're already going off in 3 different directions, trying a bunch of different things. That teaches you to be comfortable with that kind of we talked about being comfortable with uncertainty. Not that teaches you not only to be comfortable with uncertainty, but to thrive in uncertainty. And sorry, go ahead.
So you want to hear something funny? It's not funny, but it's a fun fact. During the pandemic, people that watch horror movies, but 2 also were used to living with anxiety and living with uncertainty, did better than people that don't.
Definitely. And that's not surprising at all. That's not surprising at all. And that's a strong skill to have. And I think that, Julia's research bears that out. And, that's kind of one of the central tenets of her book is that we need to encourage people to throw themselves into the deep end, to throw themselves into the problem, to engage with the math or engage with the word problem or engage with the study of Siddhartha or engage with, trying to figure out where, the route that Attila the Hun took in his conquest and that kind of thing, or, engage, do that hard thinking, because the more you do it, the easier it gets, for one thing. But then you can kind of retrain yourself. You can retrain yourself from that, moving away from that knee-jerk reaction, that fast thinking, that fear of failure, that fear of having to put in effort. And it's, I don't know, it just saddens me greatly to see people so unwilling to put effort into thinking. I mean, I'm as you know, as a studied person like yourself, you know, we feel the great rich rewards that come from learning about things and looking at the unknown and
Mhm.
talking to people that are different than you. I mean, that's one of the things that I love the most about the did we lose Helen there? One of the things that I love most about being on the ACA shows is that I get to talk to people that are think radically different than I do. And I'm just going to keep on talking till Helen decides. Maybe I scared her off. Maybe I scared her. Maybe she's out running off to go learn some new stuff. But you know, that's to me, that's part of the wonder of being on the show. It's some of the great reward of doing that is
Sorry.
all right. You're back. You're back. All right. You know, Helen,
Sorry.
I you know, I'm used to carrying the nonprofits without you, but
I know.
now I got to
I
carry your
hit
show
the
without you
I
too.
hit well, I hit the back button on my gamer mouse,
Ah,
which I'm not used to because I don't like. I got a gaming computer, because I had money and I wanted to be fancy,
uh-huh.
and but there's certain buttons that I haven't played with on the mouse,
Ah,
and
right. Are they
I accidentally
programmable?
hit it, and and it took us out. So I apologize. I've done
So
that before.
so what's your game? What's your game if you had to pick a game
I'm
that you
playing. I'm playing Baldur's Gate right now,
okay.
and I'm in. I play with Kara. We're in one campaign. Me, my husband, and Kara in another campaign, and then I have my solo campaign.
So you're doing all that in Baldur's Gate? That's
Yes,
awesome. That's
on top
awesome.
of my 3 live games of D&D that I have, and then I just wrote a campaign. So,
How deep
I haven't
are you
played the
into
campaign yet,
have you
but
been all the way through Baldur's Gate yet? Do you know about all the
no, I
endings and
have not,
everything?
and I haven't watched any spoilers. I
Oh,
refuse.
okay. Well then
I will occasionally watch like tips and tricks videos,
uh-huh.
so because they don't really go into spoilers, but I haven't watched any of the endings. I haven't watched any gameplay. I'm just having an experience.
So you're the purist, right? You're the purist. You
I'm
want to have
some things I am. Some stuff I don't like. I don't really give two shits about spoilers. This I was just like, I'm just gonna I'm gonna treat it like I play DD. I don't know the end. So
So what's your character on your solo campaign?
I'm playing a drow
Okay.
bard.
All right. Yeah, I think my first went
I like playing drows. They're
my
fun.
first run through I played a paladin, but it was just too easy. And so then I went back and I played a monk on my second time through, and it was still pretty easy that way. I think there's some abusable combos with the
Oh, there's that game's broken.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
if you there, there's some stuff you can do. I was like, I did that. I didn't know I could do that.
right.
Oh, here we go. And then like I defeat all the enemy. Like I think I was like a level 4 and I was like up against like level 6 enemies and I took them out because I did this weird combo and I was just like, oh, okay, well, there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, my current
So
run
you
through
can
I'm
like your
playing
environment and like everything's your friend.
yeah, yeah, well that's what I'm doing now. I'm playing Astarion right now and I respect him into a bard. And so
Oh
and I'm
yeah.
liking it. I'm liking it.
Yeah, I
We're
like playing my other campaign, I'm playing a tiefling sorcerer. So
okay. How is the multiplayer component to it? Is the
I
game
like it.
proceed? Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun playing with other people. Because like and then the thing is though, don't play with high people because it's like hurting cats and they get and I'm like, no, we're going
What if
this
you're
way.
one of the high people? What if you're one of the high people?
Am I one of the high people?
Then
Like,
you won't
yeah,
notice.
they won't notice. But I'm not. I'm like, where are you going? And they're like, well, I don't know where you. I'm like, I'm over here, and your character looks like, hey, I'm right here. So it's very funny.
So is your whole party all player characters, or are you playing with some of the NPCs as well in your group?
Right. Well, the one that my My solo campaign, I am. I don't. Are we playing? Yes, we are playing. Me and Car's campaign. We did gather the party members.
Okay.
The one I'm playing with my husband. We haven't made it out of the Nautilus ship yet, so
Oh,
we're
okay.
trying.
So that's, yeah, you're not very
So
far then.
yeah,
What do
so
you mean
that's where we are.
you haven't played enough to get out, or are you saying that you keep getting beaten by the
No,
big
and we haven't
baddie?
played enough to get it out because, and also he's one of the high people. So
Ah, I see. Okay, right.
it was very funny.
Huh.
So,
Cool.
but Car's playthroughs, I think twice
Okay.
because they spend a lot of time in airports and they have more time to game. I
Oh.
don't. So,
So
but
and then
and then like
having a
and the
laptop
other.
that's beefy enough to play it then too, that
Yeah,
helps
well,
too.
he should. Objectively, Dan gave them their laptop because they needed a new laptop, and Dan was like, "I have an extra one,
Hmm.
and I'll sell it to you." So, he gave them a discount on a nice fat laptop, gaming laptop. So,
Nice. Nice.
yeah, make friend the atheist community. Get some nice equipment.
Right.
Like,
You get the good hookups, right?
exactly. Yeah. So, and then one of my campaigns I'm playing an alchemist, but she's a celestial elf. She's exactly 1 year old. So she's
Oh,
eternal, but 1 year old.
okay.
She came down, got really obsessed with mushrooms, and now she does alchemist based magic with mushrooms.
Nice.
It makes bombs and trips and does medicine healing potions. Like she's really into mushrooms. And then so I have that character. And then
Awesome.
the other campaign I'm playing a paladin rogue. And then my other campaign I'm playing a bard. Because bard's
Do
my
you
favorite class. I love playing a bard.
you like bards?
I
Yeah,
love bards. They're my favorite class.
I like playing any class where I can I don't like playing specialist, right? I like to be able to play the field,
Yep.
playing what was needed and fill in the gaps. And so I like to, yeah. So I like playing a bard. I like playing artificers as well, just because they can kind of, they can switch roles really at the drop of a hat. You can
Yeah.
be, your party needs, damage. Okay. You can do that. Your party needs healer. Oh, I can do that too. You need,
Yeah,
what
that's
do you
why
need?
I like playing her. And then she also has like the celestial elf advantages, so that's a nice
Cool.
buffer
Cool.
as well. So it actually worked out really cool when I picked her because I was like, well, well, I want to do something different. And then we already had a bard and we had a tank, so
Mhm.
I was like, what do I want to do? And then my kid's playing the ranger. So I was like, I'll play an artificer. And then I did homebrew and I was like, oh, and I got all excited because there's all the types of stats of all this stuff on the homebrew. So I was like, fuck yeah. So
Nice.
it's fun. Because like this is my escapism. I'm going to play D&D for the next 4 years. So I cannot think about how terrible things
Well,
are.
we need to stay engaged though. We need to pay attention. But yeah, I'm
It's a
all for the
balance.
escapism too. Yeah, I'm definitely
It's a
definitely am.
balance.
Right.
I
Exactly.
do activism, and then I play D&D. So I can, because like the 4 things I want in life is to hang out with my friends, drink wine, play video games or D&D, and have orgasms. Those are the 4 things I want. If I
And
don't
if you
get
do it
those 4
right, you
things,
can do all 4 at the same
all
time. If you do it
forwards,
right.
baby.
Yeah.
That's exactly. So those are my goals.
Okay.
And that's how I want to live my life. But the thing is, so for me to do those things, I also have to make sure other people can do things that make them happy. And then
Right.
and then I have to be a super annoying queer. That's the rules.
Well, your role in life and you've embraced it and kicking ass.
Yep.
Awesome.
So I did put your links into the doobly doo, but tell the people where to find you.
Well, you can see me on Talk Heathen. My next appearance, I think I'm scheduled for March 30th, which is 2 weeks from yesterday. And I believe I'm also going to be on the nonprofits that following week after that. So to find me, you can find me.
I think we're on together that week.
Yes. Yeah, I think we are.
On the 2nd, we're on together. Yeah.
So Talk Heathen, nonprofits, you can find those on I suppose anybody watching this probably knows where to find those. But
It's
you
in
can
the
find them on
links.
YouTube.
It's in the doobly-doo.
In the doobly-doo. Yeah, exactly. And
That's the official term.
you can also
For
find
the
me
description box.
on rare occasion. You can find me at FreeThinker's Fireside too. That's
Yes,
oh, hey,
Scott will be back this summer.
yeah, I wanted to tell you that my wife said to say hi.
Thank you, and tell her I love my background. I'm so happy.
Yep.
Scott's wife did Scott's wife did my background for me.
Yep.
It's very sweet of her, and my banner. I love her. She's fantastic.
She is. She's
Thank you
definitely
so much.
fantastic, and she's also
you did good on the wife choice, Scott.
She's
good
a
job.
very patient human being, and I'm thankful for that every day.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so glad. Yeah, she's incredible. So yeah, tell her I said hello too. So Thursday, next show, David Fitzgerald, where we're going to talk about his book series, Playing God, an evolutionary history of world religion. So there's 3 books.
Awesome.
He also signed mine because I told him I wanted his books, and I said, hey. He said, well, I'll send to you. I'm like, do I get them signed? And he was like, yes, I'll sign them and send them to you. So
awesome. You have all the sweet hookups.
I know all the cool people.
Yep.
And then so that's coming up this week. I have to pull up my schedule. Do I ever remember my schedule off the top of my head?
By the way, I appreciate that you could squeeze me in on a Monday schedule on a Monday.
I'm gonna, like, the thing is though, I'm gonna have to start doing these twice a week. I think
you're just too damn popular, Helen.
I'm popular. I know all the people.
Jeez. Everybody wants to be on Helen. Yeah, everybody who's anybody is on Helen's show, and so.
Well, also too, people keep recommending people to me, so I have to email them and like invite them on and stuff. Yeah.
I almost feel bad that I'm on right before a heavy hitter like David Fitzgerald. It seems like, oh, well, okay, sit around long enough, somebody good will come along.
So next Monday, I'm having my friend Dan on, also known as Dickie. He is he's just starting his activist dipping his toe in the activist world online. So he's going to talk about how labels don't serve us. So we're going to talk about that. And then on the 27th, Ethan Michael, your friendly neighborhood atheist, is going to be on, and we're going to talk about next Thursday about community building. So that's coming up. Those are the next 3 shows. So yeah. So if you want to be on the show, email me here. Mondays or Thursdays. Thursdays are booked till June 12th. My next opening is on a Thursday. It's June 19th. So that's my next opening in June. If you want to get on sooner, I'll put you on a Monday. The only 2 nights I'm doing though, guys, like I only made an exception for unless you're overseas. If you're overseas, I'll make exceptions. Like Sydney's going to be on.
You have an extra special episode for Cindy.
I have extra special episode for
extra
Cindy.
Special, so that's definitely going to be worthwhile.
And also Richard Gilliver gets an extra special episode. If you are overseas, I will do an extra special episode.
Richard is not quite as special. He's not quite as special as Cindy.
No, he's not. No, he's only a little bit special. Cindy's more special than he is. Exactly, like that's the rating.
Right.
So please like, subscribe, please share. Like I said, buy me a coffee. I like money. It helps. I just want you to play for my Streamlabs account, guys. Like if I make $27 a month to pay for my Streamlabs account,
nailed it.
All right, and then now me and Scott are going to go talk about my D&D character. So we're going to go. Oh, by the way, if you're on the Atheist Community of Austin Discord and have time on an occasional Sunday morning when Scott's group gets together, you can hear Scott, Glenn, Cindy, Chris from Crew, and Jamie the Blind Limey.
And Tim also from the crew.
And Tim.
Yeah,
and Tim from the crew.
Yep. We got a D&D campaign going, and we have lots of guest stars from the ACA dropping by and participating as well. But it's on the hush hush.
So so shh.
Right.
So do yourself a favor and go on the Atheist Community of Austin Discord. So
we don't have a regular schedule, but I do try to put it. I do try to put it into the events calendar. So if you look in the events calendar, you might be able to find our D&D thing. The name of our group is No Encumbrance Rules.
I love that. All right. So anyway, that's everybody. I'm gonna say bye. I'll see you all on Thursday. Be kind, be skeptical, give someone a compliment, and I will see you all on Thursday.
All right. Bye bye. Thanks, Ellen.
Thanks. All right.